Thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to do a review of congruence. Now, congruence was a brief lesson that I had you do on your own that week before spring break. However, probably only about half of you looked at that lesson. So for those 15, this will be a review. For you other 15, this will be new. So remember when taking notes, listen first, then pause, and then write. All right, congruence. We're going to be able, by the end of this lesson, to define and to determine congruence of shapes. Starting out with what is congruence. If we look at that word, a word that we use frequently in math is incongruence, which is congruent, and congruent means equal. So if two figures are congruent, their corresponding sides are congruent and their corresponding angles are congruent. Congruence is equivalence. Things that are congruent are equal. All right, so we have these two triangles. These were in the notes before spring break, the lesson that I had you look at. You're going to notice triangle ABC and DEF have tick marks and angle marks. Tick marks are for the sides, and then the arcs are your angle markings. You're going to notice that B and E don't have an arc because they are a special angle. What kind of angle is that? Yes, it's a right angle. When you see that box, you know that's 90 degrees or a right angle. Okay, so on these triangles, we can tell that they are congruent because of the markings. You're going to notice that there are similar tick marks and similar angle marks. Corresponding sides are sides that are in the same place on each figure and are congruent because they have the same tick marks. So side AB corresponds to side DE. They are congruent because they both have that one tick mark. Side AC, the hypotenuse of our right triangle, is congruent to side DF. We know that they're corresponding because they both have the 3 tick marks. And then side BC is congruent to side EF. That's the bottom leg of each right triangle, 2 tick marks. Corresponding angles are the other parts that we look at with congruent figures, sides and angles. And those are angles that are in the same place in each figure. And they are congruent because they have the same number of arcs. So you're going to notice angle A at the top has 1 arc. So does angle D at the top of our other right triangle. They are congruent. Angle C has 2 arcs. I know it's kind of hard to see, but there's 2 in there. And angle F also has 2 arcs. So those are congruent. And we already talked about B and E and what makes them congruent. All right, so something we practiced, or some of you practiced before spring break, was writing congruency statements for the sides and angles of the triangles above. So when you're talking about sides, to mark a side, you put that line over the 2 letters that make a side. So AB is congruent to DE. Remember, this little symbol means congruent. If you can't type that, do the best you can. I got some interesting things last week from the people who turned it in. You can also type out the words is congruent to as well since you're typing. But AB and DE, okay? AC and DF are congruent. And again, those were the hypotenuses of each right triangle. And then CB and FE are congruent. Angles, you just use that little angle symbol. It is a key on your keypad. So angle A is congruent to angle D, angle C is congruent to angle F, and angle B is congruent to angle E. So those are congruency statements. We can write them when we know things are congruent by the markings on the triangle. All right, next side. Now I have a picture, and I'm telling you that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle EBD. You're going to notice there aren't any markings. We're going to add those markings, which is why I left the screen like this today, so I'd be able to access my pens and use them. We'll see how this goes. All right, so let's start with corresponding sides. Let me get a nice little purple pen here, okay? So side AB, I put 1 tick mark there. What side on triangle DEB corresponds with AB? Now, some of you might want to say BD, but it's not BD. It's EB down here. So triangle CAB, CAB triangle, has rotated on point B 180 degrees. So if you can picture that flip, then this becomes AB. Side CB then is congruent to DB with that rotation. Okay, and then the outside sides, CA and ED. Okay, so there's my tick marks. Now my arcs, let me use a different color. Both these triangles have an angle B, so those are congruent. Angle A, we'll put 2 arcs in. And if we do that rotation on point B, where's angle A get end up? On angle E here. It's like we turned it upside down. And then angle C, 1, 2, 3, matches up with angle D. So I know this is true because the problem started with this statement. This was telling me that these triangles were congruent. So because they're telling me they're congruent, then I know that they have corresponding parts that are congruent, corresponding sides and corresponding angles. Okay, now, we also know something about 2 of the sides. AC is 4x minus 2 centimeters, and DE is 22 centimeters. So if we brought some algebra into this and said solve for x, what you would know is these are 2 congruent sides. AB is congruent to side DE. Notice I used the word side this time instead of the bar on top again. However, it's easy for you to type. You can write out the word side instead of trying to figure out how to draw the bar on top. Because they're congruent, that means they're equal. So I can write an equation. What would the equation look like? If you said 4x minus 2 equals 22, you are correct. This is a 2-step equation. We're going to make a 0 pair with our constant. 22 plus 2 is 24. Here's our 0. So we have 4x equals 24. Divide by the coefficient. X is 6. So 6 times 4 is 24, minus 2 is 22. They're congruent. They're equal. So we throw a little bit of algebra in with this congruence. If you have any questions, write them in your notes and I will check them as you submit them. Thanks for tuning in.